All right, good morning, everybody, or good afternoon. Good morning on the West Coast. We are going to have a curator walkthrough today with Stephen, who's here with us, and about Act Natural and with the artists, so a few of the artists and Berlin Collective artists. And I'm so excited. The show was very organic the way it came to be, and I'm just very pleased with it. So I'm just going to do a quick introduction on Stephen, and I'm just reading here from his biography on his website. So he's a conceptual artist who's in the show as well, who primarily works in wood, solid surfaces, hardware, and fine finishes. His artwork is about personal identity, perception, belief, memory, and the materials and objects that reflect and obscure our domestic lives. His work has been exhibited at the Bradbury Art Museum, the Cameron Art Museum, the Leo Castelli Gallery at Brno University, Cape Cod, Museum of Art, Moses Lake Museum, Art Center, Il Museo Colle del Duomo, and Lincoln Center, amongst others. He and his work have been featured in such publications as White Hot Magazine of Contemporary Art, Art of the Times, and Artaholics magazine. So he's a writer and an artist, and he earned his BFA in Maryland Institute College of Art, and also at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, Maryland. And he lives and works in Los Angeles, but is currently in North Carolina. Correct? Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Okay. So
Cool.
I'm going to hand it over to him. Today we're being recorded. Thank you so much for everyone for joining us. So we're going to look at the exhibition, and I'm going to make him the host, and he can show us the exhibition of Act Natural. Okay, we are in the exhibition. So why don't you start, Stephen, by talking to us about how you started with this idea of the exhibition.
Excellent. Well, they were a small number of Berlin Collective members, of which we are members, who had a Zoom meeting about 6 months ago.
Yeah.
And it was just sort of a regular sort of crit room that you would experience, a critique room, or just to sort of, show what works everyone was working on or what they were interested in. Sort of to date, some of the works were older, some were more recent. And I just noticed this, what I thought was an obvious running theme sort of after the meeting, which was that all of the work reflected some engagement with nature. It wasn't just, the works weren't just, observations of nature or depictions of nature or, sort of ideas or sort of poetic reviews. They were sort of really about engagement with nature. So after looking at the works after the Zoom meeting and sort of walking through some of our Berlin Collective members' artist websites, I decided to throw together a sort of an overview and present it to Nicole to see about possibly doing an exhibition, whether it was going to be virtual or a brick and mortar exhibition of some of these works, which I thought were all really fascinating and formally really quite different, both in medium and in scale and expression and all these different things in style. And so in a statement that I wrote, a curator statement that was part of the initial proposal, I intended, or I sort of talked about how I wanted the exhibition or the works in the exhibition to explore the themes of perception, connection, and acceptance of the natural world that we are inherently a part of and that we exist in. A lot of the artists who have work in the show have work that goes beyond the traditional sort of understanding, Western understanding of what is seen as a conflict between humans and nature, where we are sort of thrust into nature, where we have to create a buffer between our sort of, organized lifestyles and the chaos that amounts to what we perceive nature to be. So I think a lot of the works went beyond that, and a lot of the artists obviously think and live beyond those common terms. English philosopher Alan Watts sort of clarified the position and said in a famous quote, you didn't come into this world, you came out of it like a wave from the ocean. We are inherently part of the pattern. Not only are we a part of it, we're part of the pattern that sort of moves. And so I started looking at the works of Nicole Cohen and Martha Colburn and Valerie Fuchs and Alice Garrick and Gwendolyn Kerber and Paul Payment and myself, and started to look at some of the running through lines and sort of subjects that were attended to in these works. They do, like as I mentioned in that same series of notes for the proposal, if you take a cursory glance and you look at this large piece by, let's say, Martha Colburn, this fantastic, what amounts to a still from a pretty well-known film that she did a few years ago that shows conflict in nature, right? You see, warring factions who are here. Let's go back to that image that larger one right back.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll just
hold on. I'm trying my best to get over there. Hold on a second.
Oh, you're right there. That was it. That last one was it.
This one?
The big one with the guy with the gun, firing the gun in the woods.
Right? Yeah.
That one, yeah.
Okay,
so we'll just settle there for a second.
Okay.
So this piece was pulled from a film. Martha does these incredible sort of collage-y type animated shorts that often deal
Martha's
with.
Here too, right? Hi, Martha.
Is she here?
Yeah,
excellent. She's here.
So
they often.
hello.
Hey there. Maybe Martha can talk about it. Martha, you want to talk a little bit about this piece, about where it comes from, and about this piece by itself as a still?
Yeah, this is a still from a film I made that covers about 400 years of war, the U.S. involvement in different wars, and this was a scene of the Korean War, I believe. Mm-hmm. And I used the puzzles as a way to as kind of like just a very basic metaphor for the breaking down of reality. I think that if you're in war, recovering from war, it must be this complete break with reality. So that I use the puzzles as as like a molecular. It's kind of like to turn the landscape into something molecular, which is something natural. And in the film, the basis of the film was the nature of war in man, or the nature of violence in man and man in nature.
Okay, cool. So that was just one piece. I guess we can go to another piece. Thank you for talking about that, Martha. Let's just check out another piece from another artist.
Stephen, if this is an appropriate time to say this, I think this is a really interesting way to present a show of artwork. I think it's, in a lot of ways, previous shows that I've seen that have been online, they were just more like going to a website. You go to a website and you see everything listed, and then you click on it and you see a larger version of it.
Right.
And it's just like going to somebody else's website. What I really liked about seeing this show, and why I thought it was so successful, is because you actually created a space for it, a virtual space.
Sure.
Which means that we're really looking at the work in a really different way, but it's much more of like a VR experience or an alternate experience. It's a lot harder to get your head to wrap around something like this, I think. But I really, really, really love it. In some ways, I kind of feel like, these virtual art shows that are, again, like, it doesn't excite me at all to go to a website, where, right. The show's being hosted on this website for, it doesn't do anything for me, because it's kind of like, it's just like going to the website and looking at it. this is a very different experience.
Sure.
And I think it's super cool. And I think you did a really great job of putting it all together too.
Thanks. Thank you.
You know, I think it's a lot more exciting to see the work like this. And I see a lot of potential for that too, especially, I mean, not only because, you know, now we're kind of, I think it's safe to say we're coming out of COVID a little bit more than we were in the last couple of years,
Right.
where we couldn't actually go and see something live or in person or actual. And now we're actually able to see this virtually in this space. I think this is really super cool. I love it.
Yeah, we do too. I'm thrilled that there are a couple of different virtual spaces available to populate with shows like this. And it helps just to have the scale and to see the overhead light and to sort of, you know, it's sort of easier to sort of look, just like when you walk through a real show in a brick and mortar space, to sort of, you know, you look at a piece, it makes an imprint, it stays with you while you're looking at the next piece, and you sort of get a little bit of that experience here, which I really love. Hey, Paul, talk a little bit about this piece that Nicole has pulled up an image of on her screen. Yeah, it's called Nexus.
Nexus. Yeah, the series is called Nexus.
And which particular Nexus is this?
This is called Dixon, Montana.
Okay.
So, well, it's really interesting because I think in a lot of ways, you know, when we were talking about this kind of virtual world or virtual reality, you know, we're not experiencing the show in person. We're experiencing it, you know, a step removed. I mean, kind of much more like a video gaming. And I think of my paintings a lot in that same realm too, as a window into something else. And in this regard, it's a window into this natural setting. You know, I want these to be kind of like ideal or, you know, ultra kind of like beautiful moments. But those moments then are being interrupted with the possibility of these architectural forms that are really, for me, the representations of people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, our architecture is human presence in there. And, you know, a lot of people are going to look at this, and I kind of hope in some ways people have this view that they look at these as going, wow, this is like these linear structures that are interrupting this natural setting. Mm-hmm. And, you know, obviously there's a part of me that says the same thing. That's like, oh, geez, you know, like these are so great. Why do these other things have to cohabit? But we do cohabit these spaces. So for me, it's a little bit of like reality, but maybe, you know, there's a compromise where these structures can cohabitate in maybe a positive way too. And
are there formal elements within some of those images that may ostensibly seem invasive, like the architecture or like what amounts to the human intervention? Are there elements in them, formal elements like a certain color of a building or a certain level of transparency, or are there certain things in those elements that may cue us or that may help us to gain a level of acceptance of this cohabitation you're talking about? What kinds of elements do you think may point to that for viewers? Are there things that you suggest?
Yeah. Well, I look at it like this, that this is it's a scale. I mean, they're meant to be intrusive. They're meant to be disagreeable. There's a, you know, because otherwise I would use things that were more decorative, or even, you know, I think of an architect like Gaudi, who is really making, human structures that are very organic. And that's completely contrary to what I want in these paintings. I want them to be very linear. You know, to have, and a lot of people describe them as modernist, and which is, that's all fine, but really what I'm very interested in is the linearness of them, that creates drama with the organicness of the landscape. Yeah. So, you know, I kind of think of this as both sides of our brain. You know, we've got, you know, in like you know, Betty Edwards terms, we've got the holistic side, you know, which is much more natural. It's almost like primitive. And then we've got, you know, this logical linear side that's much more mathematical and it's thinking geometric and putting these things together. And again, like they can't, I look at it like this, they can't exist in isolation. These things need each other. You know, so I want there to be this kind of cohabitation that goes on, and like a tolerance of both. So the architectural forms are for the most part, they're also on top of the surface of the painting. So they don't belong, they're not necessarily in the paint. Yeah. So, but the challenge is that I'm asking the viewer to kind of look at these and put them together, even though they don't necessarily belong in the same plane. So, you know, I like a pill that's like bitter and sweet at the same time.
I have a question.
Sure.
About the actual painting. I mean, like the paintings are insane. Like they're so detailed. Like the grass and the textures. It looks photorealistic. Do you? That's how you paint? That's really, you're painting that photorealistically? Like that's insane.
Yeah, it is.
Like, do you have a paintbrush with one hair?
A mouse hair.
Yeah. Well,
they're based on photos, though. All right, obviously.
Yeah, they're based on photos, and I'm going to all of these locations and composing. So for each one of the compositions that you're seeing, like I may have taken 400 photos of like slightly different variations, and I'm looking for the right one. Ultimately, I can tell you though that the grand vision that I have for this series of paintings, I'm just kind of scratching the surface with these. The newer ones, and the ones that I'm working at are again, it's very much about the surface of the painting. The surface of the painting is the entrance way into the painting.
Right.
You know, it's like the window that we're looking through. But now, we're looking at paintings that are a couple of years old, and the newer ones are also kind of combining very, very, very kind of like gestural abstraction almost in with the photorealism of it. Because it's funny because people always describe them as being photorealistic. I don't think of them that way at all.
How do you perceive them?
That's weird.
I perceive them as that's a great question, and I perceive them as communicating the concept that I was just talking about earlier, about this kind of commingling that, and really for me, it's kind of, saying that the paintings that we are part of nature.
Sure.
We're part of this whole virtual construction, and that we don't exist outside of that. That they're all part of the same thing. And hopefully an acceptance of that. And a lot of times these paintings have been, I'm not going to say kidnapped, but have been used for like ecological shows, which I'm absolutely fine with. It's not necessarily my intention.
Right.
I don't have those. God, I wish I could say I'm apolitical. I can't say that, but I wish I could say I was. But I have very little political interaction, just because I can't stand partisan politics.
Yeah.
So
I think actually,
hey, Nicole, look, we're looking at one of your pieces.
I just guided it because I'm realizing how many things Paul and I have in common.
A lot.
Because
we went to the same grad school.
Transparency.
And this, I mean, my work has always been about ephemeral projections. And so I always take a still image and use a projection to activate a space. And I also deal with the tension of stillness and movement. So the difference, I think, with ours is that his are both, they're a culmination of images, but mine is more about trying to make a move in some ways, and his are about the, tension between the stillness of two opposing forces. And so this is a series that I started. This was actually the first in the series where this is a park in Teaneck where I live in New Jersey. And I was like, gosh, it looks so timeless here. I'm always looking for places that look like they could be at any time, except for like maybe the design of the playground or whatever, but it looks so timeless. And I thought, God, I wonder how many people came here before, like ancestors and people. And so I started looking at vintage images and saying like, I've stepped the same way in their shoes. Like I've been, we're overlacing in time, just different fashion, different time periods. But, they've been here before, like they walked this earth, whatever. So, but I've always been attracted to people from the back, because I feel like it shows them a certain level of respect in that when it's from the front, it's too confrontational. And I feel like, she didn't ask to be in my artwork.
Sure.
Nobody asked her, so I'm essentially, taking her and putting her there. And out of respect, she's just a person from that
Well,
time.
it's like a candid shot in a way. It's not that it's not that you're capturing an illicit movement or activity, but it's almost like, it's a slice of life as opposed to, a reconstruction of life or a portrait.
It's not about the person. It's about a person.
Right.
It's not about
exactly.
characteristics. So it's supposed to represent somebody of that time period, and nobody's going to wear a fur coat on the beach. This is like how I imagine my grandmother when she came from Chicago. Like, I don't want to take my fur coat off when I'm arriving in Miami. I'm still cold from Chicago. Paul?
Also, when you're showing somebody from the back, you, in a sense, you're not removing their entire identity, but you're removing much of their identity.
Absolutely.
Right?
Their facial features, and it's just somebody who's there. And also, the other thing I felt like is the fact that they're deceased people. And I always had this strange idea that people, people from the past, like, are jealous that they're not living, like this weird sort of idea.
Like their spirit.
And then I started thinking about it and thinking, actually, they're not jealous. They don't want to live in this time period. I remember, when people are older and they say, okay, bye, I'm done, I'm checking out, they are like, I can't deal with this life. I had my lifetime and I'm good with that. So this sense of like, we're all here in these tracing periods. And this particular one I like because of the footprints that she's looking at too. There.
You know what? I also, Nicole, when ever since I've seen your work back, even in the like mid 90s into late 90s, I've always thought of your work in terms of holograms as well.
Yeah.
To me, they definitely have like a hologram quality. And I think it's because of the projected figure on top.
Well, this is funny because like, this is actually a shortcut. What I really liked about this show and what Stephen forced me to do, I really thought like, oh my God, I showed too many of these pieces, like my goodness. And he was like, no, it must
talk about it.
And then the explanations. So this one is a lady was created in Woods Hole. That's where I was born, in this area of the Marine Biological Labs. It's in this little town. So basically, but this picture was taken. It's a shortcut that only the locals know about. How to get from like one high area to another area. So, I cut, and it's an international area. So she's sort of like this woman coming from like Taiwan or something. She's wearing heels at the beach. She's like, I'm still bringing my culture there. And this one is the actual shortcut from my grandparents' house down to downtown Woods Hole.
Wow.
That nobody really knows about because you can get poison ivy.
Tell us a little bit about the models. You choose models who are obviously, these aren't images that you've photoshopped from existing photos from, let's say, the turn of the last century. These are people who you have chosen as models and you have dressed them up in wardrobe to present as those people from the
No,
right?
they're people from the past. They're not people that I dress up.
They're not. They're not.
No.
You don't use models. Oh.
No, they're archival images. They are not people. I have done that. Dressed
You
up.
have done that, just not
yeah,
these featured
in the present, but not in these.
Got it.
And this one, this woman actually looks like somebody that I know, but I thought she was disguised enough with the glasses, and so and she has kind of a good demeanor there too, but she's very camouflaged in. Yeah. So these are, when I put them all together, they create this kind of phantom, and it's like acting natural in this space, but they're there, they're not there. I'm not really sure where I got this whole visual language from, but probably from movies where like somebody's a ghost, or one was from R2D2, when he projected out Princess Leia,
Star Wars. Yeah.
Princess, Obi, you're my only one.
Hologram, just like Paul was saying. Yeah.
Remember the projection of the hologram from R2D2 that was like jammed and it kept repeating?
Yeah.
That was the first NFT.
Yeah, absolutely.
R2D2 created it. Okay,
funny.
so moving along, I'm gonna hold on a second. Try to move to. I'm obviously not great at this touring here, but I'm trying to move it along. I'm going to move it over to Alice's piece.
Yeah, let's check out Alice's stuff.
How do I get it to go?
If you use your back.
Go this way, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
And you can back up by hitting the, there's a left and right and a forward backward button on your keyboard. You can back up.
Go to this piece first. So there's Alice's here, so she can speak on her work. You have to unmute Alice. There you go. We can't hear you.
Unmute. I'm unmuted now, right?
Yes, we can hear you. You can speak now about Iris Kerr.
Okay, you brought up projection, and what I do is actually take real flowers and put them in my enlarger. So I'm projecting them onto 16 by 20 inch negatives.
Wow.
It is an analog process. And so, it's funny to use that word projection. I kind of like that. It's a new word. And then when it comes to producing the artwork, I actually paint with palladium. So I'm kind of working that I'm in between being a photographer and a painter. And when I look at my paintings, I realize I have such an admiration for Chinese and Japanese calligraphy and that kind of painting that moves rather than is static and detailed, because the details are in the negative. And if I can match my painting with the negative, then I'm okay. I have lots of failures. So in terms of the set of irises, that's what I was doing, was trying to, in a sense, interpret the iris doubly. So in one way, I made a negative, and in another way, I'm painting in order to print what I've done, but print it kind of, in a sense, expressionistically. So that's what I was aiming for, is this combination of being photographic, which is so detailed, and yet at the same time be very expressionistic. So it, in a way, it gives more, to me, it gives more life to the photograph. And sometimes I'll actually, like in this one, use double negatives, paint, but then contact print double negatives onto the paper.
Wow.
So that's the process in these three. And I'm working on it this year again, very differently, produce more iris. It seems like I always go back to iris every spring.
What does that represent to you in your oeuvre, in your body of work, the iris? What does it allow you to do as a creative person, and what kind of import does it have? What kind of meaning does it have for you?
Okay. Well, it's interesting for me to say that I love this particular flower so much that, you know, every year. And I also make drawings of the iris, which
it also comes up every year at that time.
yes.
That's the time of the year and the calendar of the flower.
So it's a perennial that shows up at the same time in the spring.
All perennials do.
That's right. And yet it's very ephemeral, as we know. So it speaks about not only perennial every year, but how ephemeral its passing is, that it's there and then it's gone until next year. So there's a kind of sense of birth, flowering, death.
The big life cycles, yeah.
The life cycles.
It's really funny. I was thinking when you were speaking of iris, I thought you were talking about the iris in our eye. And
interesting.
And not necessarily the iris in the flower. And I was thinking in terms of homophones.
That's interesting.
Of putting these together.
That's very interesting.
I love homophones.
Me too.
Okay.
They're great for coming up with work titles. I run them through my brain all the time.
This one is so incredibly beautiful with the hand and the ephemeral quality of the hand. It's stunning.
Oh, thank you. And again, it's actually, I was thinking again of our human life and how we really are part of the earth. And so taking, I photograph people with tattoos, and his tattoo is barely discernible in there.
So on the arm,
Yeah, it's on his arm. But, I was thinking more in a sense of our own involvement in the earth, whether constructively or destructively, both, that we are of the earth, and how we do is kind of still debatable about what our effect is.
And thank you so much, Alice. And this here we can talk about Gwen's piece too, because I want to make sure we cover all the pieces.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take a look at this. Let's zoom in on this. Study for Pond on Wheels. She's got a series of these. And do you want to read that, Nicole? Do you want to read the description?
Okay.
There you go.
The body of the pond in Study for Pond on Wheels was painted on site. The web of blue lines is a piece in response to the question of how to work with a surface of water reflecting the sky. It's also like about this sort of transient presence, like a reflection, or like similar with Paul's, the ephemeral building, the living harmoniously to things with and projection, overlay, presence, and says Alice's as well. In mine.
When I initially reviewed all the participating artists' bios and artist statements, I just default to it's the editor and writer in me to just sort of cleaning up the language, streamlining the text, making it sort of fit the format, and all those sort of perfunctory things that writers and editors do. And I remember reviewing one of these, and I rewrote her individual piece statement and said something about, and alluded to something about its depiction. She said, no, I want to be really clear. This is not a depiction. I want audiences to feel like they're in the muck, they're in the water, they are among the leaves. And this is just a closer touch, a closer hand, I guess, than anything else like that. She said, and it's not so much the scale or the detail or how it's cropped as much of these other formal elements that sort of put you right there. And I said, okay, great. And that's when I took my hands off the wheel and said, we're going to stick with what you wrote, because now I get it. So it was kind of nice to make that request, because it helped all of us sort of clarify what the work was about. But these works are beautiful. They're these elegant little pieces that sort of put you there. They give
I
you
particularly like the sculptural element of the shape of them too.
the
Like
irregular
the
shape.
shape of them, it's very poetic, and the leaf of being underwater a little bit, and be able to see the bottom of the water, the reflection on the water.
Yeah.
And she lives between America and Berlin, and so she does kind of lives in this duality also. So it's sort of interesting to be representing a duality
Yeah.
too. Yeah, these are very beautiful.
They're really nice. Quite nice.
And this is Valerie's. Valerie, are you here? I don't know.
Do we have Valerie here?
She was supposed to come, but she might not. She's on the road, so she might not have made it today. So I can.
We can read from another one. How about that?
Yes.
We'll pick another one.
Okay. So shift from the Weil series, video projection loop into layered printed surface. So it's a projection. Weil conceptually refers to the veil of the Isis, the allegorical artistic motif in which nature is personified in the goddess Isis, who is covered by a veil or mantle, representing the inaccessibility of nature's secrets. I'm interested in this inaccessibility of secrets layered over time. Visual natural references imbue my work with the mysterious layered aspects of nature, land, forest, fields, and creeks. And she really steps into those places.
She does.
Yeah.
Like Alice.
Like Alice.
Like Paul. Hey.
Yeah. This is a floating city, but this is kind of like Paul's in a way, the merging of two places to make it look realistic, but it's almost like looks sci-fi.
It does look sci-fi. Wow. It's pretty wild.
And this one too.
This is a still from another video installation, it looks like.
Yep.
Okay.
So that
yeah,
I haven't seen these in person. So these are all video installations, or
some are stills from the actual screen that the installations feature, and some are images of the installed works as an installation. So and you can play them all directly on the website, but a few of these are represented as just a document of the installation itself. This one looks
but
like
this is a solar panel light box that's backlit film. So this is a light box with the film on the back, and the ice glass containers etched with text. This is installation.
Yeah, there's an installation view.
Projection. So we can see.
Hey, somebody's in there with you.
I see some people here.
Paul, what are you doing there? I thought you were in Long Beach.
And Stephen,
I did too.
Here's Stephen.
Yeah, there's some of my stuff in the corner. I can talk about a piece if you want.
Yeah, cool.
So that's a piece that I'm showing in 3 places right now. It's showing in a gallery in Italy. It's showing in the Cameron Art Museum in Wilmington. And of course, it's in our show right now. So in those other 2 shows, those are physical spaces. And there are 2 different sets of oak, wood, fire burning logs, and galvanized steel pails with water in them. And here it's a photo of the initial set that went to the Cameron Art Museum. But as a photo, and I kind of like it as a photo. I kind of like it as a record. And it's simply called Chop Wood, Carry Water. And it alludes to a pretty well-known Zen koan, or this sort of short story about a young monk who was sort of frustrated in his sort of daily duties to do workaday world things like chop wood and carry water and prepare rice for the monks and all these things. And he goes to the head monk in the group and says, hey, I'm getting tired of this. I see that you seem so content and you've got these leadership skills, and you've reached some form of enlightenment. And he pulls the young monk aside and says, I have, and I had all those questions like you did, and I had to sort of go through the rigors of sort of just living on this planet while I was trying to reach this epiphany that I have now reached. And before I reached that enlightenment, I had to chop wood and carry water. And after I did, guess what? I had to do the same thing. I didn't get to sit in a cloud and pontificate wildly or act as a fearless leader untouched by the rigors of living on this earth. And so I liked, I chose that piece for the show because the show is about our integration in nature, our emergence in and through nature, not our separation from it or the distance from it. And so this was sort of like talked about, our return to duty, to working with and through nature. There's a great quote. Let me see if I can find it.
I think it's very funny that you put your piece above the light switch.
Oh, the other piece, the purple piece, yeah. a lot of people accuse my more.
I mean, I don't know why you would do that, because your piece is so minimal, and you put it above the light switch. I mean,
it was actually just for practical reasons. I was trying to use as much of this short wall as possible. There are other.
I know, but like that, does that light switch even work?
I don't think so. No, it's all symbolic.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Purple heartwood, if I'm not mistaken, becomes purple when it's exposed to oxygen and light.
That's right.
Oh.
Okay, so this did not start out as purple.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
When it's
transition.
That's right. When it's harvested, and it's not harvested that often. So for anyone who thinks, Stephen's buying exotic tropical woods just to help, blast the tropical rainforest, I'm not. But when it's harvested, and it rarely is, it's sort of like a beige color, and it takes a while to dry before it's kiln dried. And then when it does, it becomes this bright purple color, this really intense sort of purple color. And every time you cut it, because I've got to cut it and plane it and shape it to make these, these shapes look uniform, it turns brown again. You have to let it turn back to that nice purple color. And just as you sort of look over all the sides and you go, okay, it's sort of the same purple, then I got to trap it. Then I've got to coat it with a really nice fine, whether it's a lacquer or a polyurethane, whatever it is, or otherwise you get brown spots and stuff. So there's a lot of timing involved in trying to make it look like somebody stamped it out. It's actually a lot of, I've got to do it. It is, even though it looks so super simple. It takes a lot of timing.
So your work looks so unnatural.
It does. I admit it. Totally.
That it's so funny. It's like you're telling it, act natural. You're natural. Please act natural. And it's like looks so unnatural.
I know, and yet it all alludes to nature. It's all made of natural stuff. All these are made of wood. The silver
I know, that's the irony of it.
Are they're made of. That's a pure elemental, pure silver. It's a pure element from the earth.
That I think is an interesting point. And I always think of, I love this idea that we've had for decades now about material as metaphor. I was just listening to a great talk by Marshall McLuhan the other day talking about that in regard to media. Anyway, but it's something that's always on my mind. And that's one of the reasons that my paintings are on wood,
right?
And that the linear structures are on plastic,
right?
Like literally plastic,
right?
So, and using acrylic paint is also plastic as well.
Right.
So to me, there is no difference between synthetic material or man-made material and a natural material. They're all the same thing essentially, because how could you actually get something that's just purely man-made? Because it's got to come from somewhere.
It doesn't exist. Someplace, right?
It's got to come from some elements, exactly.
Right.
It just means that it's more refined.
Right.
So we'll move to another
piece, or have we covered everybody? A little one piece from everybody. Who else? Let's check out who else do we have.
Well, no, we haven't. These pieces here.
Those are mine. I don't need to talk about them, but we can if you want.
Okay.
Yeah, back up. I'll read it. Here, zoom in. I'll read from my own quote. Let's see a little bit more. Let's see. A little more. back up a little. Okay,
There's
that's it.
nothing
Little too close.
Silver Sunrise, Dawn of Hope is about the greatest and clearest of our conscious potential, like a discrete moment in the waking state that sets the course of both our day and the macro picture of our lives. I used silver leaf, as we talked about before, which is one of the elements, one of the primary elements, chemical elements, in the drawing, as it reflects the viewer and often represents the state of purity and clarity in that figurative reflection, or whatever other reflection that silver sort of reflects. And I looked at it later, about 6 months after I made it, and I realized it looks an awful lot like the President Barack Obama campaign logo. The O for Obama. Somebody pointed that out to me. But it's sort of about some other things. So yeah, that's just essentially silver leaf on Canson paper. And I like these circular formats because they sort of, even though the image is on a flat piece of paper, I like to allude to its objecthood or its space or its activation in sort of the real world. And to me, sort of circles, they sort of represent that. They sort of, there's no beginning, there's no end, there's no sort of,
Well, circles are the most, I mean, I know triangles
eternal,
are the strongest, right? But circles represent
Eternity.
constant, and they're also, considered very healing and strong.
They are. And they allude to, cycles and unending sort of cycles and things like that. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Here's another one.
Just like our old clocks.
Yeah.
That had hands on it, right?
Right.
Cyclical.
Oh, yeah, our old clocks. So let's look at the show as a whole. And
yeah, let's spin around.
We have Ann Spalter here, Martha Colburn, Alice, Carolyn Hopkins. So
Carolyn too, yeah.
We can just
Carolyn, thoughts, musings,
we can
anything?
open this up for any questions that people might have about the show, or any perceptions, that sort of.
Yeah. Let's ask Carolyn or Ann to say a few things if they have anything to say. I would love their amazing.
Well, I'm sure they have a lot to say, but if they'd like to say, anybody who would like to comment or have any questions.
I have a question.
Okay.
There's one in the
Go
ahead. Sorry.
I've spoken a lot, but my question is, if this show is virtual, why does it have an end date to it? Couldn't it just be up forever? Or is somebody going to be using this space after you're done, Stephen?
Yeah, because people are installing, so we have to cut off the date.
Right.
No, the reason is because we rented it. Berlin Collectiv paid for the
rented it for 1 month.
Space.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that you had to rent out a space like this. I thought that they were.
Yes, we rented it out.
Yeah, it's hosted. Now you can buy some of these, and you can also rent them from the companies that provide the templates. They do 1 month at a time periods, and they're pretty reasonably priced.
So one of the things I would like to say about the show too is that there's always this question like, well, everybody would have some work that might pertain to the subject matter. Why these artists? But the reason literally is because I think these were on Stephen's radar because they were the people that came to this meetup that we had. Yeah. And so I'm sure other artists that are part of Berlin Collectiv, their work would fit in beautifully, and
absolutely.
Hopefully this would be a continuation, where more people would want to do, curating. I know I would, but, curating more projects. With the Berlin Collectiv, and also inviting people like Martha to come and join in. So let's open it for some questions if anybody has any.
I have something to say about it.
Yeah, Carolyn, please, we'd love to hear from you.
I really think it's a top drawer show. It was really curated well. Selections, I think, really spoke to each other. So it's really held together really beautifully. And I've been involved in shows using this kind of similar format, which is wonderful that we can do it. but I also really would love to see these things in person.
Yeah, me too.
I really would, because we're still working with a flat screen, you know, and these came across beautifully. So I'm thinking that in reality that they're really special and very, very thought out and well done to everybody. Really, kudos to the whole group. Very enjoyable show with a lot of impact. So
yeah, Stephen and I actually talked about that a little bit, how his is like a photograph of a like it's a photograph of a photograph, like the removal, since it's through the computer, in some ways it misses that aura, you know, of the presence. And ironically, like, especially in Paul's work, that it is about presence too, or, you know, so that we did talk about the possibility of actually doing a show maybe in Kentucky or New York or, you know, some place like that, to do a physical show of this.
So as ideas come to us, let's, you know, convene in another Zoom meeting after this meeting to talk about ways to mount it. Yeah.
I really enjoyed it, and it was great. I was glad I was able to come in and hear the, you know, the commentary and hear people talk about their work. I think it always adds so much. You know, you look at something, you feel like you understood it, but it adds so much, I think, to hear artists and curator actually talk about the pieces. And I'm a huge proponent of circles, so I like that.
Me too. I can't get enough. I'm returning to them all the time. I've got a short stack of them on my desk. When I can't get into a larger studio space, I'm obsessively making circular
but I know
art.
so much work goes into curating something and hanging it. So you know, thank you. It's really
we didn't even need an exhibition staff for that. It was great.
I was so glad there's
this time around, but yeah, next time.
I don't have to talk about NFTs for once, so that's also really exciting.
Excellent. All right, Nicole's back. I'm gonna hand it back to. It's okay.
Yeah. So I think that Stephen, you did a wonderful job, and all the artists and the collective, you know, all the work that you've been doing that we've been seeing on social media. I just wanted to say that we're super excited about the Spanish artist retreat that we're going to have coming up.
Oh yeah.
That a lot of people, you know, we've got people on board, and we've taken deposits, so it's like all a go. Very exciting. And the other thing is I'm going to be featuring an artist once a week in the social media. And so we're going to be doing a little video interview and featuring people. So that's very exciting also.